Welcome to History Inside a Nutshell, the show where we sail into our port of call discussing maritime history. When you think of ships built by the White Star Line, you would think about the Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. The Olympic class liners were 3 out of the 120 ships comprised by the shipping company. However, there was one ship that had an equal amount of incidents, like her younger sisters. Despite her flaws, she was known for spacious and comfortable accommodations and had a reputation for being punctual, with ample reserve power to make up for delays she had encountered on the hostile North Atlantic. Her career ended early in the First World War, but like the SS Cymric, she had a fascinating story that deserves to be told. Although she has the initials RMS, she's known as the Oceanic II. RMS Oceanic, Life and Legacy. I never so fond of any ship, either before or since. Those were the words from Charles Lightoller, who was the second officer of the RMS Titanic, who described the Oceanic as his favourite ship. And who can blame him? There were many positive compliments about the ship, as much as other White Star liners, especially when it comes to ships that were the fastest in the world. At the beginning of the 1890s, the White Star Line gained a reputation for building the fastest ships in the world. But there have been periods where the White Star Line have gained a bad reputation for their ships involving themselves in collisions and sinking. One example is from the Oceanic's predecessor, the Oceanic I, built in 1870, where she collided with the SS City of Chester, killing 17 people. By the turn of the late 1880s to the early 1890s, things had begun to change, and when the term blue ribbon of the Atlantic began popping up, there was an increasing competition for shipping companies. White Star gained the title twice in 1891 with the Majestic and the Teutonic. 1 year later, they lost it to Cunard, but interestingly, the Cunard line refused officially to recognise the title because racing vessels weren't in line with their safety policy. Despite this, Cunard kept receiving the title until 1898, when the Deutsche Lloyd line received the title for their ship, the SS Kaiser Wilhelm. The SS Kaiser Wilhelm, one out of 4 ships built as part of the Deutsche Lloyd Kaiser class liners, was a super fast, super large and super luxurious liner that quickly dominated the North Atlantic shipping lane. It gained an amount of attention from the British press and the public, and shipping companies like Cunard and White Star became concerned. With the popularity of the SS Kaiser Wilhelm, White Star wanted to build a flagship which would regain British supremacy on the North Atlantic. White Star had already put one ship into service, the SS Cymric, but this wasn't enough. White Star knew something had been missing, and although this didn't become a problem, it did take the company a short period to figure out what was going on. This had begun during the construction of the SS Cymric. It happened when the ship caused contention with the company and designers at the Harland and Wolff shipping yard in Belfast, Ireland. The contention was that SS Cymric was originally going to be built for livestock and passenger accommodations, but only for first-class passengers. When the contention ended, it had been agreed to change the plans where the compartments for livestock had changed into rooms for third-class passengers. Following this change, White Star realised that they kept receiving complaints about their previous ships, including the Majestic. The complaints were about the ships being relatively noisy, especially from the sound of creaks inside while travelling during heavy seas. In response to this, and even though speed was a main focus for White Star Line, in response to the SS Cymric, they decided to pay less attention to speed and more to comfort and luxury. At Harland and Wolff, Oceanic's keel was laid on the 18th of March 1897, and during her construction she was gaining an amount of attention from the press. Every detail about the Oceanic had been written, mainly in comparison between her sister ships, Titanic and Majestic. In attention to describing her large spaces and comfortable accommodations, multiple resources claim the Oceanic would have powerful machinery and would have greater measurements in tonnage and length. In comparison to the SS Cymric, the Oceanic was 105 feet wider with a length of 705 feet. She was longer than her predecessor, Oceanic I, whose length was 430 feet. Her tonnage would have also been 3/4 greater than Majestic's. Because of her length, Oceanic would accommodate 2,250 passengers. The hull was launched on Saturday the 14th of January 1899, and within 7 months the Oceanic had her furnishings and funnels and was ready to set sail. On the 6th of September that year, the Oceanic began her maiden voyage from Liverpool to New York, under the control of Captain J.G. Cameron. After stopping in Queenstown, now Cove, in Ireland, she arrived at her destination successfully on the 13th. Following her maiden voyage, the Oceanic stayed in New York for charity. The ship was open to the public and they paid tickets to visit the ship to raise money for local hospitals. Following her maiden voyage, the Oceanic became a popular ship. One source claims it was a first-class hotel. On the Liverpool to New York route, she had become known for her reliability, punctuality and speed. The Oceanic could travel at a speed of 21 knots, the highest speed for a White class liner at the time. Inside, she had grand accommodations in first class, and she had spacious and comfortable settings in third class accommodations too. She became so popular that a sister ship had been planned. This ship was supposed to be called Olympic. If the Olympic would have been built and would travel on the same route as the Oceanic, then both ships would have become two out of a new class, the Big Four class. However, plans were cancelled following the death of Thomas Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line. When Thomas's son, Bruce J. Ismay, took over the company, he noticed that since the popularity of Oceanic, he said that after the Oceanic, the only goal was for comfort and luxury instead of speed, comfort and luxury. Her popularity was greater in the United States, and as it grew, talks had begun for the Oceanic to join White Star's new Southampton express service. When it was proposed, it was agreed that White Star would transfer the Titanic, Majestic and the Adriatic. Before the decision was made, there had been talks about the express route for Southampton as early as 1894. Despite this being in favour of the American line and White Star Line, there were fears that companies would remove Queenstown on the new route, since the port and town were valuable for mail and passengers, which brought the companies lots of money. However, White Star have agreed that their ships should continue to travel to Queenstown on the new express route. White Stars also had to face strikes from the crew, and some left when they were dissatisfied with railroad fare and working conditions. However, the drama settled and the company officially changed Oceanic's route in 1907. On the 19th of June that year, the Oceanic began her new express route from Southampton to New York. However, like some of the company's other ships, the Oceanic had its fair share of problems. In the years during her service, the Oceanic broke her anchor chain, lost a propeller blade, had a fire on board while remaining in New York Harbour, was struck by lightning at sea, had a collision with a ship, and a scandal when 33 firemen were arrested for conspiracy over a dispute over pay. She also ran into heavy weather in the North Atlantic, one in 1909 when a huge wave swept over the bridge, smashing one of the chart room windows. This caused 2 casualties, with First Officer Thompson being injured from flying glass and Captain James G. Cameron knocked unconscious when he fell off his feet from the gravel force of the wave. He returned to the bridge after he regained consciousness. The other was in 1914 when the Oceanic was hit by another huge wave, sweeping in 4 feet of water. The water swamped passengers in their deck chairs on the promenade deck and smashed 3 deck house windows and a stateroom window. Luckily, no one was hurt, but her rigging and decks were covered in ice and snow. But in 1912, there was one near collision the Oceanic was involved in. This had occurred in Southampton when, on the 10th of April, the Oceanic almost collided with her younger sister ship, the RMS Titanic. The Oceanic had been docked in Southampton since March due to a coal strike. Oceanic was scheduled to start her voyage in the spring, but had been cancelled. She remained in Southampton until May. In Oceanic's place, Titanic and RMS Olympic would set sail on the Southampton to New York route. Oceanic was laid up with an American liner, the SS New York, when the Titanic's powerful propellers created so much turbulence in the water. This caused the SS New York's moorings to snap, creating a series of gunshot sounds. The SS New York and Titanic almost collided with each other. Luckily, Titanic's captain, Captain Edward J. Smith, took quick action and ordered the Titanic's port engine reversed. The ships stopped in time, but it took an hour before the Titanic continued on with her journey. Days later, the Titanic collided with an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic with a loss of over 1,500 lives. On the 13th of May 1912, the Oceanic was sailing in the North Atlantic when she discovered a lifeboat floating nearby. The lifeboat turned out to be collapsible Lifeboat A from her ill-fated sister Titanic. Upon the finding, the Oceanic's crew discovered 3 lifeless bodies, which were then buried at sea. The Oceanic took the lifeboat aboard afterwards. If you would like to know more about collapsible Lifeboat A, there's a video from Historic Travels. A link to the video is in the description box and on the card above. In July 1914, there was an outbreak of war. As the first month of World War I had begun, the UK government was requisitioning ships into war and hospital vessels. The Oceanic had been requisitioned into an Army merchant cruiser. Months later, on the 8th of September 1914, the Oceanic was abandoned by her crew and captain after she crashed into the rocks of the Shalons of Flora in the Shetland Islands. The cause of this final collision occurred when Royal Navy Captain William Slater and Captain Henry Smith conflicted with each other. Smith was assisting Slater with the ship. However, there had been reports of navigational errors and conflicting orders between them. Both captains couldn't agree on anything, with one knowing the Oceanic well and the other doing what he was supposed to do in his naval training. After the crash, the Oceanic was stuck and attempts to free her had failed. She was left in the rocks for 2 weeks. When the condition worsened following a storm, the Oceanic was abandoned. As a result, both Smith and Slater were both exonerated of any wrongdoing during a court-martial of the incident. However, the officer of the Oceanic, David Blair, was reprimanded for not taking proper precautions to sound on the approaching island and not taking immediate action when he sighted the rocks before the crash. Following the court-martial of the incident, the Oceanic remained on the rocks until 1926. She was salvaged that year before a second salvage operation took place in 1973. By 1979, some items were removed, but there are a few remains which can be seen today. Following the sinking, there would be more 3 ships that were built and were named Oceanic, with one cancelled due to the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, the White Star Line was in serious financial trouble. Along with Cunard, started working together, creating the Cunard White Star Limited. In 1949, the name reverted to Cunard and White Star Line was no more. However, Cunard flies the White Star flag every year on the 15th of April in remembrance of the Titanic disaster. The Oceanic was a ship that's remembered for having a fascinating life, but a tragic legacy. Her popularity for her speed and accommodation made her the champion of the Atlantic at the time, but like the Titanic, she was in the wrong place and at the wrong time. Because of human error and later misconduct, Oceanic had an ending she didn't deserve. Now, I couldn't cover on all of the Oceanic information because of time, but if you would like to have a look at the book that I based my research on, and if you want to read it yourself, I would recommend reading Oceanic: White Star's Ship of the Century by Mark Chirnside. I honestly think that this book was the holy Bible for the Oceanic. If you are a big maritime historian like me, I would highly recommend getting the book. This book is available at Waterstones, but it also can be found on other online stores, bookshops, and on websites like Amazon. I will leave links to the book in the description box down below. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe for more historical content. Until next time, this has been History Inside a Nutshell, departing from the docks. Thank you so much for all of your support and enjoy the rest of your voyage.